What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JFK Debates Project. I'm your host, Matt Douthit from Dallas, Texas. Today we have Scott Maudsley from Toronto, Canada.
Yes, Toronto, Canada.
How are you, Scott? How you doing
I-
tonight?
I'm good, buddy. How are you?
I'm good. People have been asking us to debate, discuss on so many times over the years.
Mm,
So many times. Like six, seven,
yeah.
8 times. I'm like, I don't, I don't want to. I know this guy. You know what I mean? I eat chicken nuggets with this guy. I don't.
I ate some nuggets earlier today because I knew I was debating you. I was like, oh, I gotta fuel up.
I didn't have any today, so
Uh,
I'll lose, but who knows? But anyway,
maybe.
why don't why don't you start off by telling us how old were you when you got into the Kennedy assassination and what drew you to it?
I was young when I got into the Kennedy assassination. I was about 8 years old at the time when Oliver Stone's JFK came out. I remember being interested in the Kennedy assassination from when I was like a kid in an elementary school. So I've always been into it. I've always been reading about it, studying about it. I've been online discussing it with people in various Facebook groups for like 20 years now. It's a lifelong interest for me, man.
Was there a particular book that got you interested in the case, or a documentary, or what? Oh, you said it was the Oliver Stone movie, right?
Yeah, it was the Oliver Stone movie. Yeah, that's what really got me as a kid. As a kid, my first JFK book was The Killing of a President by Robert Groden.
Mm.
And I have an autographed copy of it. The first time I came to Dallas, I made sure to bring my copy so I could get it autographed by Robert Groden. I read Case Closed. I read, Reclaiming History. I've read a lot of books about the JFK assassination, dude. I've read a lot of them, but I haven't read all of them. Nobody really has. It's just being interested in the case, interacting with people, discussing it over the years.
Yeah. What is what's your favorite book on the assassination?
That's a good question. I have a lot of favorite books. I'd say that Case Closed is probably the best as it's the most concise and easy to digest. Reclaiming History is great if you want a more detailed account. Um, Oswald's Game by Gene Davidson is really good in understanding Lee Harvey Oswald, his psychology and motives. Uh, what's the one by Mailer? Oswald's Tale by
Oswald.
Mailer is really good biography of Lee Harvey Oswald. Marina and Lee by Priscilla McMillan is a very good biography of Marina, a very good, you know, encapsulation of her perspective.
Yeah. So you're a lone nutter, so to speak. You feel that Oswald did it all by himself, right?
Yes, I'm a lone nutter through and through. I think the evidence of Oswald's guilt is abundant and overwhelming.
We'll get there in a second, but
I'm sure.
so were you always a lone nutter, or did you first think there was a conspiracy? And so
No, I when
what
I
made
was young, I thought there was a conspiracy because I came to this case through Oliver Stone's JFK, right?
Mhm.
So it's like you can't watch that movie and not walk away thinking it was a conspiracy because that's like the whole point, right?
Yeah.
And when I was young, I really did believe that and I researched. It was around the time I was in high school going into university that I really began to think about it. And there was this moment I had where I realized that I had been excluding that explanation as a potential explanation. And I was trying to construct like a different explanation because I had this attitude that, like, obviously the official conclusion is not correct. So there has to be another explanation which is correct, but I could never produce that alternative explanation.
And what was it that made you turn? You said it was a cumulation of different
It,
things.
it was accumulation of things. I had an American history lecture in my first year at university where the professor asked people like, Raise your hand if you think Oswald did it. Raise your hand if you think it was a conspiracy. Okay, if you think it was a conspiracy, do you have any idea who, how, where, what, any of those things? Can you answer any of those questions? And nobody could. And at that point, these thoughts had been percolating for a couple of years, and eventually it all just clicked for me. I was like, this was Oswald. It's very obvious.
What's an example that made you think, oh, this points to Oswald after all? Was it a piece of evidence, one piece of evidence, many pieces of evidence, or just, or what?
Well, it's the mosaic, it's each piece of evidence individually, and then when you put all of them together and you zoom back, you see the whole picture, right?
Okay. What would be like so like where do you want to start off with this? This is like a no rules debate. We could talk about whatever we want. What do you want to start off with this? Like what's a piece of evidence that
Well, like he owned and possessed the murder weapons in both cases. Eyewitnesses saw him pulling the trigger in both cases and identified him. He was seen fleeing both scenes of both crimes. He was in geographic proximity to both murders within a very short time span of each other. He has no alibi for either murder. I mean, it's from my perspective, it's very obvious.
here's an alternate hypothesis. Is it possible that Oswald is entangled in a conspiracy as a double agent who was double crossed? Therefore, he would have left the building, fled, got his gun, and went to meet a handler at the Texas Theater. Could that account?
No,
Could could
no,
could that? I mean, all that describes what you just described. It checks off all the
n-
boxes. He left the
no.
building. He ordered the gun for
It, it
somebody.
it doesn't. He was the one who pulled the trigger. He was the one who shot the president. An eyewitness saw him do it and identified him as being the one who did it. His prints were on the murder weapon. He has no alibi for the time of the shooting. And I mean, if he actually was some kind of double agent, he never said that. He never said to the authorities, "Hey, I'm a double agent. I'm working for the government. I was double crossed. I was actually supposed to prevent the assassination or whatever." So there's no real reason to believe that.
I really wish that those interrogations were recorded because we only know what we only have what
Yeah.
a
You
page and
know,
a half of notes.
the JFK assassination is not the only thing that it's not the only interest you and I share in common, Matt. We're also interested in the sinking of the Titanic, right?
I
You
see
know,
your Titanic.
it lights up.
Yeah.
It,
In fact, hold on.
it lights up, and I have the map behind me there.
Here is my autograph, Bob Ballard.
Oh, nice, nice, awesome, awesome.
I
That's
this yeah.
that's a good book. I have that book.
I know I devoured this when I was a kid.
Oh
So
yeah, me
I
too,
mean,
bro.
so much I lost. I don't know where the dust
Oh,
jacket is.
nice,
So it's around here somewhere. But anyway, yeah,
nice. You got the hardcover too.
I got that.
Score, buddy.
I met him when I
But
was
oh,
years.
you met Bob Ballard.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
That's
that's
cool,
how I got
dude.
it. Yeah, that's how I got it autographed. Yeah, he's just a nice man. So
Nice, awesome, awesome. But the point I was making with making that reference is, we really wish that those interrogations had been recorded. And, we also really wish that the Titanic had forward scanning radar. It's like we can wish all day long. It is what it is. In 1963, the technology to do stuff like that was not as nearly readily available as it would be in later decades. Today you could just look, I'm doing this meeting with you on a phone, right? Like today we could just
yeah.
pop out our phone and hit record, and there you go, audio recording. But they didn't do things like that back in 1963. It was all pen and paper and old school interrogations. So
It's just how many pages are there of Fritz's notes that we have? Just like 2 pages.
I'm
like
not sure.
like
I
two
know we
pages.
he didn't really write that many notes because that wasn't his interrogation style. He liked to talk to people and build a rapport with them. And that's a very like old school interrogation kind of method. But I mean, it was 60 years ago.
Where a lot of people don't read are like the FBI interview reports of Oswald. Like if you look in the Warren Commission's documents and their files, actually it's like wow, they have like it says like interview with Lee Harvey Oswald the night of November 22nd, November 23rd. It's like they're interviewing him and they're like writing reports, but it's like I'm just like ask the question, you know what I mean?
Well, like what's the
Crazy.
question? What's the question?
Well,
Like what
it's like they never asked him like well how he got from the rooming house to the Texas Theater. He says he didn't kill Tippit, but it's like well they never asked him how did you get from there? It's like he admitted yes I got on the bus and the taxi, but it's like how did you? They never asked him how did you get to the Texas Theater then? You know what I mean? It's like just ask the
Yeah, but I
question.
mean they already knew that because he was spotted by numerous eyewitnesses making his way to the theater. Like he was spotted at the scene of the Tippit shooting, he was spotted leaving the scene of the Tippit shooting, he was spotted on Jefferson Boulevard, he was spotted going into the theater. So it's like they already had him, you know?
We're jumping the gun a little bit. So let's start off. Oswald brings a package into work that day. The official story, and I've heard you talk about the paper bag in some of your other interviews that you did. So you think that the gun, of course. So you believe the official story that the gun was in the bag, correct?
Yes, yes, obviously, yes. Well, what else was in that bag?
I don't know his lunch. I don't know.
Okay, I'm gonna put my hands together, Matthew, and I'm gonna start moving them apart. Tell me stop when you think we get to the size of this lunch.
Well,
Was his lunch this big, dude? Yeah, carrying it like that.
I
Like,
don't
I
I
mean,
don't know. He's cupping it under his arm. It's not big enough to be a gun. That's
oh, okay, let's have this discussion, but let's like have it seriously, you know? Like say what tell me what you actually believe and why you actually believe it. Like, if you don't think that that package contained the rifle, what do you think it contained?
I don't know. I don't know what it contains. I don't
Well,
think I
like what?
I don't think I have to come up with an explanation. I mean, basically, all I can say is if anyone reads the subchapter in the Warren report on this topic, it's called the long and bulky package. It's only like 4 pages long. If anyone reads this, they will come away convinced that there could not have been a gun in that bag. And this is
Well, the Warren Commission, who published it, was convinced that there was a gun in that bag. I mean, I've seen references to the Warren Commission about the package Lee Harvey Oswald was carrying. I'm convinced he carried a rifle. And I mean, okay, I'm not saying it's your responsibility to provide an alternative series of
of course, yeah,
events.
yeah.
But what I am saying is, okay, between me and you, dude, we're both very knowledgeable about this case. Like, aren't you curious about what was in that package? Like,
Well,
have you never thought about that?
I'm curious, but it's like it doesn't really
Well,
mean
what do
much
you think it
because
could have been?
curtain rods, like he said, I don't know.
But why would he need curtain rods? The room he's in already has curtain rods, and he's
They
just
were bro
renting a room.
If you look at the picture, they were that afternoon. Weren't the curtain rods broken in the picture?
No, I don't recall ever seeing that.
Aren't they broken in the picture? I could have sworn. I don't know why I say that. I think
No,
I'll have to
I
insert
don't
it.
ever recall seeing that. But
I'll
I
insert.
mean, okay, even if they were broken, it's the responsibility of the landlord to fix that. It's not his responsibility. Lee Harvey Oswald was a notoriously stingy guy. And
Yeah,
I mean, did he go to Ruth Payne's house on that Thursday to steal curtain rods out of her garage
there,
without telling her
there
anything about that?
there were curtain rods in later found in Ruth Payne's garage that had Oswald's fingerprints on them, and I was like, wow, I had never heard about that before. I was like, wow, that would seem to that would seem to make sense. They just
It and any explanation that doesn't have the rifle as the thing in the package he's carrying with him to work that morning creates the problem of how does his rifle get to the crime scene? How
I
does it fire the projectiles that kill the president?
going back to the rifle for a second, I think I would concede because you mentioned that he ordered the rifle. David Lifton, who I knew very well, he conceded that Oswald ordered the rifle, and I was like, "Wow, really?" Because a lot of almost every conspiracy believer does not believe that, and I was like, "Well, if he believes it, I'm willing to accept that Oswald ordered the rifle, but I don't think that proves that he killed the president." I mean, lots of everyone who orders a gun, and if that gun is used in a murder, that doesn't mean they did it. You know what I mean?
No, I know, but when it's your gun at your workplace with your fingerprints on it and an eyewitness sees you pulling the trigger,
We'll get to the fingerprints in a second. So Bill Frazier, who of course is the witness to Oswald carrying a package, for those that don't know, he said it was, oh, he said it was, he estimated it. He said, based on how he was holding it and this, and they did a test on where it laid in the back of his car. He said, okay, it touched here and it ended here. So they calculated it as 24 inches. Well, that's just great because that's way too short of course, to contain the rifle broken down.
yeah, but that's not the actual package with Oswald's prints on it that was recovered from the crime scene, right?
We'll get there in a second, but the bag that's in evidence now is 38 inches.
Yeah,
That's way so that can't be again based on what he saw, and also his sister Lenny Mae Randall. She said it was 27 inches. Wait, 27 inches. Let me 28 inches long. So again,
28. Okay.
I mean that's
Yeah,
short.
they're a couple of inches off in their recollections and estimates.
I
I
mean,
mean, we have the actual bag itself that contains fibers that are consistent with
we'll get
the
there.
carpet or the blanket that the rifle was stored in that have Oswald's fingerprints
We're
on it, that
jumping the
have
gun.
gun
We'll get there.
oil on
We'll
the
get there.
inside of the package.
We'll get there, Scott. We'll get there. We'll get there. But so they showed Frazier the bag that's in evidence now, and then he said, "No, that's not the bag I saw him that morning." I mean, and then they're just like, "Oh, he's just mistaken," despite the test. Like they tried to make it work. They did a test where they said, "Okay, where in the back seat did it start and where did it end?" I said it was rested here and it ended right here, and it was like the same, 24 something inches. So it seems to make
Yeah,
sense. And
why
he says no,
why
that's not the bag. He said that's way too
why
long.
why would they do that if they were just trying to cover it up to begin with?
Do
Like
what?
why would they go through all this length to like restage how long was this package if this is just supposed to
Because
be
they're trying to
whitewash
make
and
it
cover up?
because they're trying to make it work, and they're like, oh, it doesn't work.
But we agree he had a package with him on the morning of the assassination. We all agree about that. Like everybody believes he had a
Yeah,
package in the morning.
and
Okay,
and
but
so they just said, oh, he's just mistaken. Next page, and I'm like,
because
no,
he has to
he
be,
does.
because the actual
does
facts of the matter are different. They have the package. It has his prints on it. It has fibers consistent
hold
with
on,
the
we're
blanket.
we're jumping the
It
gun. So
has
then
gun oil
so
on the
his
inside of the package.
we're jumping the gun. Hold on, I have so much I want to say on this. So they say, oh, he's just mistaken. Okay. And then they go to his sister, and she said it was what, 28 inches long? But again, the bag is 38 inches long. And when they showed her the package, and she said, no, no, no. And she actually picked it up and she was like, no, it was she folded it back and she was like, it was this long. And she folded it
Well,
to
the
28 and a half inches.
The package, when it's fully unfurled, it's 38 inches long, but the longest component of the rifle, when disassembled, is only like 34 or 36 inches.
And
So it's possible that you could put the rifle into the package and then fold the package a bit to make it like a couple of inches smaller. But I mean, this is just subjective recollection and estimates of a package that they briefly saw. How many times in Fraser's testimony does he explicitly say, I didn't pay much attention to it? Multiple times. He says that over and
obviously
over
enough.
and over and over in his testimony.
That is true, but he was able to tell where in the back seat it was, okay, where it began, where it ended, and he was able to show exactly how long it was the way Oswald was carrying it. And if you and someone did a test with him where they actually recreated how long the package that Lee had, and then they made it longer to show how it would be with the rifle in it. And it's like, to me, it's like game over. It was
It's
stuck up way above his head, and he couldn't have been able to carry it that way. I mean, to me, it's just a done deal. And if you stop right there, and we're not even in the building yet, we're not even in Dealey Plaza yet. If you stop right there, there couldn't have been a gun in the bag, and that means there had to be a conspiracy. So who brought the gun in?
that's a huge assumption to make. That's a huge assumption to make. It's all speculation. I've seen recreations with a disassembled rifle in a homemade bag wherein it just protrudes like a little bit above his shoulder as he carries it like that, parallel to his body. Again, like Frazier stated over and over and over again in his testimony, he did not pay that much attention to it. So going to that testimony looking for like precise technical data, how long was this package exactly? It's not the right source to be looking for that information from. I mean, okay, we have the package. If that's not the package that he brought in, how did his fingerprints get on it? How did the fibers from the
They
blanket
did
get in it? How
when
did
they
gun oil get on it?
correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't they when they looked for prints originally on supposedly the bag that's there now, they couldn't find prints. That's volume 4, page 3, and volume 4, page 267. I don't.
That's from the Warren Commission.
Yeah,
They
it's
were probably lifted by Lieutenant Day with the Dallas Police Crime Lab, just like he lifted the prints off the rifle.
no.
They be
The
they
FBI
began
couldn't.
to process all that evidence immediately, and then while they were in the process of processing it, the FBI intervened and they stopped and sent it to Washington.
I mean, it's the guy Latona from the FBI said that he couldn't find any prints on the bag, right?
I'm pretty sure his prints were on it,
And this
but let's keep the discussion going.
and people say that, and you said a fiber from, so supposedly the commission claimed that the fibers from the Payne house matched fibers found in the bag, right? But it was only
Yeah.
like one fiber, and they couldn't make a positive identification. So it's in, and that's volume 4, page 81. So it's indifferent. So it's like, oh, his fibers were the fibers from, from the Payne house were there, but it's like I said, it's only one fiber, and it's indifferent. They
Well,
making a positive identity. So it's neither here nor there. It's either a yes, a no, or it's inconclusive. So it's
the
inconclusive. So it's like, what are we talking about?
the fibers, they're not like shell casings from a gun, they can't be matched to a particular thing to the exclusion of all other things. The most you can say is that these fibers are consistent with the fibers of another garment or blanket or carpet or something, right?
Them,
So when they found the fibers in the butt plate, those were consistent with the
no,
fibers that the rifle was, the carpet that it was allegedly stored in.
no, I'm talking about the fiber in the bag, in the paper bag.
Yeah, yeah, it's consistent with the blanket or the carpet or whatever it
But
is.
again, if you read the testimony, volume 4, page 81, it's indifferent. They're like, we can't say yes, we can't say no. It's indifferent. Like I said, there's either a yes, it matches, no, it doesn't match, or they're indifferent. Can't say
Well,
either way. So really, it
well,
doesn't mean anything.
the either that one or the one recovered from the butt plate of the rifle, one of them does match. So there
Wait,
are
say it again.
matching fibers. There
Say it
was
again.
another fiber recovered from the stock of the rifle, wasn't it?
We're jumping ahead of ourselves. We'll come back to the fibers from his shirt caught in the gun. You mean? I think that's what you're thinking about. I think you're thinking
Okay, yeah,
there's a
maybe that.
we're jumping the gun, but really quick. There's a claim, and I'm surprised that low nutters don't use this a lot, but it's right in the Warner report. Supposedly, the shirt that Oswald was wearing, supposedly shirt fibers from his shirt, got caught in the rifle, and people are like, oh, that proves. But however, it came from his arrest shirt, and Oswald changed his shirt when he got to the rooming house. So that proves that the fibers had to be planted. They planted the wrong fibers because he wasn't wearing the shirt he was wearing when he was arrested. He wasn't wearing that during the assassination. And Howard Brennan said, the shooter was not wearing that shirt. Yeah, he could be the shooter if he was not wearing that shirt. So, and that matches up with what Oswald said. He changed his shirt, but the shirt that he was arrested in, those fibers were found caught in the rifle. So it's like they planted the wrong shirt fiber. You see what I mean?
Well, like it's speculation to say that they planted anything. You know what I mean? Because we don't have any proof of that.
Well, they didn't know until later that Oswald had changed his shirts. They were like, oh shit, he told us because they again, like I told you, they're reading the FBI interview reports of him from like that day and the next day, and they're like, oh shit, he said right here that he changed his shirt in the rooming house. We planted the wrong fibers on the gun. We planted his arrest shirt. That's not the shirt he was wearing. And if you
Yeah,
and if you look at the testimony, they said they found the fibers um, on top of the fingerprint powder on the rifle. So that proves that they planted that fiber on the gun, the shirt fibers on the guns.
no, they could have
Yeah.
just found it when they put the fingerprint powder on the rifle. That's what made it visible to them.
Again, if the fiber's on the gun and then they find the gun, they pour fingerprint powder on, it would be on top of the fiber. It was the opposite. It was the opposite. The fingerprint powder was underneath the fiber. So that proves it was planted.
No, it doesn't.
It's come on, dude.
No, it
It's so
doesn't.
simple.
Why would you need to plant the fibers if he's the person who did the shooting?
I don't think he was the person who did the shooting because the police are like, we gotta nail this guy. We're gonna
Well, like,
wrap this
don't
up.
you think the police would be? I mean, it's the murder of the president, dude. It's not like the murder of some criminal or a drug dealer where no one's really gonna care.
Well, they
You,
had they
you
had
think?
no evidence on him, so they're like, we gotta plant fibers from
What do
his
you mean
shirt
they
on the
had
gun.
his gun with his fingerprints? Like planting fibers at that point becomes unnecessarily redundant.
Fingerprints on the rifle? Come on. Come
Yeah,
on, man.
they they were recovered by the Dallas police the afternoon of the assassination.
They no. Okay. So when the rifle gets to Washington, DC that night for the FBI to examine the rifle, there was fingerprint powder all over the gun. Now
Yeah,
the but had they really lifted the print in Dallas, there would have been a gap left behind. A gap. It wasn't there. So that proves
how do you know it wasn't there?
because they said they found fingerprint powder all over the gun.
Yeah, but did they explicitly say there was no indications of prints having been lifted from this firearm?
Yes, they said there's no yeah, they said there's no indications that a print was even lifted.
Where
Okay,
are you getting that from?
The testimony.
Well, from who?
Latona, he said there was no evidence the print had even been lifted or attempted. So for those listening, letting the audience members know, the a palm print was not found on the rifle for a week.
It wasn't found when it went to Washington. The official version of events was that it was found by the Dallas police and lifted from the
They
rifle,
didn't
and
claim
then the
that.
rifle went to
Again, they didn't.
Washington.
Again, they made no claim about that for a week. A week. A
Yeah,
week.
because there was
No,
like an investigation going on, dude.
there's no report of a palm print. There's no photographs of a palm print. It's not even mentioned in the press conference where they're listing all the evidence. So I think they just said, he's dead. We don't have any fingerprints. The FBI couldn't find prints, and the there was fingerprint ink found on Oswald's corpse. So to me, it's very simple that they just put his palm print on when he was dead, and a week later they said, "Oh yeah, actually, we actually do have a palm print. It's right here. We lifted it that day." But the FBI that night said, "No, nothing was lifted. We found no there was powder all over the gun. There would have been a gap. There would have been a gap behind had you indeed lifted the print." So does this make sense? There was never a print.
No, isn't the FBI supposed to be assisting in this cover up? Why are they exposing it?
I I I don't claim that they're assisting.
So you don't think that the FBI, you believe that there was a conspiracy to frame Lee Harvey Oswald for the assassination of President Kennedy, but
I
you
think
don't think the FBI was part of that conspiracy?
I think that's a loaded question. I'm because we're just talking about what the evidence tells us. The evidence tells
Yeah,
us
but like,
there were no print.
let you're saying that they planted fibers. You're saying that they planted his fingerprints.
Yeah,
So that would be the police
yeah,
committing a criminal conspiracy to frame Lee Harvey Oswald.
yes.
Okay, so you believe that it was like the Dallas police who framed him, but not the federal government?
It doesn't matter who framed him. What matters is that there were no
Well, like
there were no
it,
prints, and then agents are seen leaving the mortuary, the funeral home, and Oswald and the funeral director has to get the ink off of his fingers, off of his hand, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, we found a fingerprint last week. We just
so
we just didn't tell anybody, and we didn't report it, but here we go. Here we go."
so rather than have it be the Dallas police and the FBI work together as part of this conspiracy, first they have the Dallas police send the FBI the rifle. It's covered in dust. There's no prints removed. The
Yeah.
FBI says there's no prints on this rifle. And then a week later, it's the FBI who sends agents to the mortuary to put ink on his hands and put them on the rifle. And it's
Oh
like
wait,
they a week later, about a couple days
no,
later.
he was buried a few days later. He was buried a few days later, and then a few days after that, which would be a week total after the assassination, they said, "Oh, by the way, we forgot to give you guys this palm print that we lifted the day of the assassination."
I mean, it's really convenient that those agents who put his prints on the gun made sure to leave ink on his fingers, right?
They
Because I
didn't
mean, if they
they didn't
hadn't
take
done that, nobody would have ever known.
they didn't take testimony from the mortician, Paul Grudy, so they didn't expect him
Well,
to.
like, why would they take testimony from him? It's what relevance does he have to this investigation?
Well, he gave the answer. He helped fill in a gap, no pun intended. A gap. He helped fill in a gap as to how that fingerprint appeared. So
Or he just made up a story years later,
but there's no evidence that he did make up a story. There's
but
no.
there's no evidence that he didn't either.
Well, I
I
think
mean, if
everything together.
anything, that which is asserted without evidence can also be discarded without evidence.
Christopher
If
Hitchens. Hitchens, right?
I believe that's Hitchens, yeah. But I mean, it's a good rule, if somebody says, hey, this happened, but there's no way to verify that person's claim, I can dismiss it. They could have just made it up.
I mean, I can't say, this or that. All I can say is this is what the evidence shows, and the evidence shows there are no prints for a week, and then ink is found on Oswald's dead corpse, and then several days
We
later,
don't know that that happened. Some guy made that claim.
well, there's no.
We don't know that that happened.
Well, even if we throw them out, we still have no prints for a week, and then they said, "Oh, we have one right here." Doesn't
Okay, so either that print is real and was lifted from the gun as they claim, or it's fake and it
Yeah,
was
it's
planted as
real.
part of the
It's a
conspiracy
real
to frame him.
it's a real print because they found markings. I mean, it's Oswald's palm print, and they found grooves on the rifle on the print as well. So all that would have to be done was for them to take his hand, touch the rifle, and then they take a print, and this is all like several days later. Take the print, and they say, "Oh yeah, we lifted this on the day of the assassination, before the FBI could find no prints." But we know that didn't happen because the FBI said there was, as I said, powder all over the gun. They said there's no evidence of even a print being a lift being attempted. There's nothing on here. So there's no prints. There's no prints for a week.
Yeah,
Zero.
but why if there's a conspiracy to frame Oswald, then surely the FBI would had to have been part of that. So why didn't they just back up the conspiracy?
I don't
Why
care
didn't they
about
just say, "Oh yeah, it looks like they lifted Oswald's prints"? I mean, why would they say that publicly only to a couple days later have to send their own people into the mortuary to fake the prints? Like you see how that doesn't like logically make sense, right?
to me that's not what's important. To me is what the evidence says. And
But if your interpretations of the evidence do not give rise to a logical, coherent narrative, then what good
it
are they?
does. I think it
It
does.
doesn't.
I
It
think
doesn't.
the FBI could
Explain it.
I think the Dallas police um, put fingerprint powder all over the gun. They could not. They did some lift a lifts of fingerprints that they said were too smudged that couldn't be matched either way. And then they said, "Stop! Send the rifle to the FBI." Okay, so they ship the rifle to the FBI. The FBI examines it, and they see all the powder all over the gun. And they said, "There's no evidence that a print a lift was even attempted. There's no gap behind, which would be if they lifted the print, there would have been a gap left behind." They said, we don't have any prints on here." And then a week, and then agents are seen leaving the funeral home. Oswald's hand is all ink and everything on it. And then a few days later, the Dallas police, so no print so far. And then the Dallas police says, "Oh, actually, we have this print that we never turned over to you guys that we lifted on the eve of the assassination before we shipped it off to Washington, to the FBI." Bullshit.
Yeah,
Bullshit.
Oswald was still alive at that time, so they were preparing for a Texas prosecution of him. They
But
would
you
have
see
held
how
on to that evidence.
there's no prints for a week, and then there are prints.
No,
There's
they say that they recovered prints on day one, and that by the
that's what
time they shipped it off to the FBI,
that's what they
that the
claimed.
FBI did.
That
Yeah.
again, that's what they
Okay, okay.
claimed.
So we have that claim and we have the recovered prints. So either these are real prints that were recovered from the rifle, or they're fake prints that were
They're real.
planted to make it look like they were recovered from the rifle, right?
They're
So,
real prints that were added on late that were not from the day of the assassination.
well, the people who recover them say they were from the day of the assassination. That's what Carl Day testified to,
That's what
right?
they Again, that's what they claimed later, but there's no evidence for that. It's not in any record. It's not in the press conference when they're listing the evidence. It's not. There's
Well,
no
like
evidence of it.
the police aren't gonna tell the public, okay, here's literally every single piece of evidence we have against this guy. I mean, that's pretty common, isn't it, for the police to withhold
It's literally
information from the public?
It's literally just an asserted claim after the fact. Oh yeah, we found one that night. Zero evidence for that.
But
Zero evidence.
it's not an asserted claim because they actually have the print. So either they got it
Yeah,
from the gun like they said they did, or they faked it like you believe they did. But if that's true, if they fake it, neither you nor I
I didn't say
understands
they
why
faked
it
it.
logically makes sense. You said agents went into the mortuary and put ink on his hand and put it on the gun. That's faking it, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's faking. It's making a print later and then claiming, "Oh, we found it on the day of the assassination," which isn't true. So
Right, but
it's still a print, but it's not from that day. It's from later,
but
pretending
the
to be true.
only reason we have to think that they took that print from later is somebody's subjective claim years later that he saw these two agents, somehow he knew they were agents,
No,
coming in and leaving.
no, it's that we don't have prints for a week and then they suddenly show up.
Well, like they always had them. It's
We don't
not
know that.
like
No, we don't know that. It's
we,
not.
we do know that
No,
because we have the prints and we have the testimony of the guy who took them.
again, I can give you inventory list after inventory list from that whole week of all the items of evidence, and it's not there. It's not listed in the items of evidence for a week.
It, it's because they didn't turn it over. They kept it because they were still in the initial investigative phase.
It's not. But you're not listening. They still have lists of all the evidence, all the pieces of evidence. So you're saying that they put on a piece of evidence the blanket, but they don't care about a palm print? That doesn't make sense. It's like
Well, it
we're gonna list Oswald's camera, we're gonna list his shoes, we're gonna list the
well it, it
blanket, but we don't list the palm print. It
it's
wasn't there.
different. It's different people compiling the different lists.
We're gonna list his rifle, we're gonna list
Well, of course you'd list the rifle,
we're
wouldn't
gonna
you?
list his revolver, we're gonna list, but they don't list in any of the inventories or police reports about a palm print. No,
Because
it's bullshit.
be
Come on.
well, like, what is the alternative?
I just told you. I just told you. They didn't
The
have
alternative is that the Dallas police framed Lee Harvey Oswald for the assassination of President Kennedy.
Yes. Yes. What's hard about that? People get framed every single day.
Not for assassinating the president, dude.
Have you seen the
Like,
Thin Blue Line?
no, but that's not the president. I mean, there's so much heat on this. The president has a lot of power. There's
Don't
Kennedy
have
loyalists in the Democratic Party. The
800
Democratic
souls?
Party is very influential in the state of Texas. It,
People get framed all the time. I mean, and the Dallas police,
not for high profile murders, they don't.
it doesn't matter. They framed people no matter what. If you look at all the cases, Henry Wade, who was the district attorney at that time, look at all the dozens of cases that got overturned because they railroaded people and planted evidence. It was
Yeah,
just
but
like
oftentimes cases like that get overturned on legal technicalities too.
it was
I
like
honestly,
planting
this
stuff,
isn't like a drug dealer or something who got murdered here, dude. Like, this
planting
isn't the
stuff,
kind of murder you can easily frame somebody for.
planting stuff was just like the back of their hands. They did it no matter what. And Chief Jesse Curry admitted in 1969, he said we did. Yeah, he said he admitted. Yeah, we didn't have any evidence on Oswald. People are like, oh my God, he's actually admitting it.
Well, did
And then
Jesse Curry believe that Oswald did not assassinate JFK and kill Officer Tippit?
he believed that, but he said we don't have evidence for it. And
Well,
in the
how do you know
1970s,
he believed that?
and in the 1970s, he admitted that he heard a shot from the grassy knoll. It's like, God damn it, he's opening his mouth more.
Well,
You know,
or he's just making claims like a bunch of other people did.
or he's being honest, or he's being honest.
Well, there's no evidence of that. There's no evidence of any other shooters on the grassy knoll either.
We're jumping the gun, but to nip this in the butt about to go back for a second on the paper bag, there's supposedly the paper bag, oh, it was found right below the window. It's not in any of the crime scene photos.
I had thought it was found off to the side. I always thought it was found off to the side. And there are crime scene photos that show the paper bag on top of the boxes.
That's speculation. That's nothing concrete. And plus, we have another bag nearby with that had an employee's fried chicken in it. Remember that? And soda bottle. That's why originally people said, "Oh, the assassin ate fried chicken just before he shot the president," but it was really Bonnie Ray Williams. Remember that?
Yeah.
Who was eating it
Um,
previously? I still hear that sometimes. I was in college one time and I said, "Oh, I'm into the Kennedy assassination," and he was like, "Oh, didn't he eat fried chicken just before he shot him?" And I was like,
yeah.
still to this day, all these
It just goes, yeah, it just goes to show you, like, again, to go back to our other shared interest, the sinking of the Titanic. Recall that early reports had the Titanic being towed to Halifax,
yeah.
like early reports and stuff that goes on in the initial period. It's a very chaotic period. And sometimes that information isn't very reliable. And some things like Bonnie Ray Williams' chicken lunch can enter into the culture and the study of an event. It's funny how things work out like that. But I mean, in all fairness, the Dallas police weren't necessarily looking for a nondescript paper bag when they were searching the sixth floor, right? So it's easy to see how something like that could have been overlooked in the initial investigation.
So real quickly, I just want everyone to read the subchapter in the Warner Report itself called the Long and Bulky Package. And I'll have it here for people to read. There's the bag that's in evidence now. There's the rifle disassembled. And if you just go through this, to me, like I said, it will convince any. It's not that long, 4 pages. To me, it convinced me that there wasn't a bag in there. But anyway, I guess
Scroll back up for a second. Scroll down a little bit. I said I remember that I didn't look at the package very much.
again, well, that doesn't matter because he knew exactly. Like I said,
The
he knew
distance
he knew
between the point on the seat and the door was 27 inches.
Oh wait, hold on. Let me show you. Hold on. So, like I said, in an interview on like I said, with agents of the FBI, he believed he okay, right there. He marked a point on the back seat of his car, which he believed was where the bag reached it when it was laid on the seat. So, like I said,
The
right,
distance between the point on the seat and the door was 27 inches.
exactly. Game over. Game over.
Well, here, look what it says right below. Miss Randall said when shown the paper bag that the bag she saw Oswald carrying wasn't that long. I mean, it was folded down at the top. As I told you, it definitely wasn't that long. And she folded the bag to a length of about 28 and a half inches.
here's
Fraser doubted whether the bag that Oswald carried was as wide as the bag found on the sixth floor, although Mrs. Randall testified that the width was approximately the same.
you're
It sounds
literally
to me
You're literally
so
disproving the official story. That's why I said I want everyone to read this. If
it, it
anyone who reads
it's
this will come away convinced that there couldn't have been a gun in the bag. So I just
or they'll understand that it's just the vagaries of fallible human perception.
literally
The Fraser said the bag was 27 inches. Randall
24.
said no, he said 27. He said the length between the door from where it sat on the seat was measured at 27 inches. And then Randall said, no, it was actually 28 and a half inches. And I think the total length of the bag was what, 34 inches?
38.
38. Okay, so it's not, I mean, it's fallible human perception.
No, again, like I said, they did tests about Fraser seeing how Oswald carrying the bag. And like I said right here, this test where it showed where it began and where it ended, as we just
It
talked
was
about.
27, yeah.
Yeah, so, and he originally said it was 24 inches, so 24, 27 inches, that's too short to be a gun in there. Like I said, I want everyone to read this. this chapter, and it will convince you that there couldn't have been a gun in there. And like I said, if you stop right there, that proves a conspiracy. But the last thing I want to talk about real
It,
quickly is that what a Troy West. So the Warren Commission claimed that Oswald took paper from the wrapping bench of the depository to make the bag, but Troy West, the wrapping clerk, who never left his station, said Oswald never took any paper, and that's volume 6, page 360. So I mean, he's always at his workstation, except when he uses the bathroom and he eats his lunch right there. He never said Oswald came in and took wrapping paper and thank you very much. He never said anything like that.
he
So
might not have been there when he took it. I
so is
mean, the paper that the bag was made out of was paper from the depository, and the tape
yes.
used
Yes.
to make the bag was also tape from the depository. The
Yes.
FBI actually found the tape dispenser that
Yeah.
the tape came off of
Yeah.
because they identified the teeth pattern in it.
I think but again, all the package that Oswald had that morning was not the package that's in evidence now. That was made from the depository later. That was made from the depository. I think the
Well,
cop, I think the cops constructed the bag with the tape and with the paper after they found the sniper's nest and the rifle. They were going to they constructed the 38-inch bag that's in evidence right now to put the rifle in to transport it out of the building, but then but that's ended up not happening. So that's why you see,
no, there's photos of them leaving with the rifle, and there's photos of them leaving with the bag.
yeah, I think the original plan was that they constructed a bag to put the rifle in, but obviously that didn't up happening because they took it out separately. And that's why you see photos of the rifle being carried out separately and the bag being carried out separately. But that bag that's in evidence now, that's photographed, I think that the Dallas police constructed that after they
So the bag was constructed by the Dallas police, but not to frame Lee Harvey Oswald, just to carry the rifle out of the building in.
I don't yeah, because they didn't have any bag that Oswald had that would fit a gun. So they were like, well, let's just use this and say that that's the package that Lee used.
Well, would the police normally do that? Would they normally like construct a bag to carry a firearm from a crime scene in? Don't
If
they
you
have
look at
like evidence bags and stuff?
if you
Well,
look
I
at
mean, like we see them in the photos carrying it out with no bag or anything, right?
I know, but that's what I said. That ultimately didn't happen. They ultimately didn't put the gun in the bag to carry out. They ended up carrying them out separately, but I think they just used that bag. They said, "Oh yeah, that was Lee's bag from that morning," but it couldn't have been. Am I making
Well, what
sense?
happened to his bag from that morning?
I don't know. I don't know, but I don't know. It could have been. I think someone told me at the Lancer conference recently, a few weeks ago, that if you look at the photos of Oswald of the lunchroom, you see exactly on the table what Oswald claimed to have brought in that morning. What the lunch that Oswald claimed to eat. You see the wax paper for the sandwich and the cheese and the apple. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know. He
But
could have chucked.
he didn't eat lunch that day. Nobody saw him in the lunchroom at any point eating lunch. And the night before, he had stayed at Ruth Payne's house. Did he take a lunch for himself out of her fridge and not say anything to her about that?
I think that's what he claims. That could have been his lunch underneath his arm. It's
How
makes
big was
sense.
his lunch? Who carries their lunch underneath their arm like that, Matt?
I don't know. It could have been his lunch or it could have been curtain rods. We don't know what was in Lee's package. I just
Could
know
it
that
have been
I
the
just
disassembled rifle that was recovered from the scene of the crime?
all we know is that in the lunchroom on the table it shows the lunch that he later said he was eating. So maybe he got rid of his lunch bag, maybe that was a different bag that he had curtains in. I don't know. And wasn't there a disturbance by one of the tables that could have that where you could have placed a package? So maybe he placed the package there.
Well,
before.
like it would have been recovered. It would have been recovered
I
after
don't
they
know. I
searched
don't
the
know.
building.
It's a thing, but
Well,
let's
like how did that rifle get into the building? Somebody brought it into the building, right? Because it's there.
Ralph.
So
Ralph Leon Yates. I don't
who's that, and why did he bring it in?
No, I don't think he brought you. You know the Ralph Leon Yates story, right?
No, I don't think so. Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay, so November 20th, Ralph Leon Yates picked up a hitchhiking Oswald on the Thornton Freeway who carried a long package which he said was curtain rods. The Oswald showed Yates a photo of himself holding a rifle and asked if he thought JFK could be assassinated from a tall building with a gun like the one in the photo. Yates dropped the Oswald off across the street from the Texas School Book Depository. So, the simple explanation is that Oswald delivered the rifle 2 days before the assassination, and that he was already in the building, I guess, and that he supplied the gun to whoever the shooter was on the sixth floor.
Do you actually believe that?
Yeah, this guy, that's CD
Why?
CD5 pages 417 to 419, CD 205 pages 44 to 48, CD 320 pages 126 to 130.
But why? Why
It's
do you
told
believe this person's account?
because he's very
Obviously, none of the official investigations believe that person.
it's told very beautifully.
There we go.
It's told very beautifully in the book JFK and the Unspeakable by James W. Douglas. It's a story that the Ralph Leon Yates story is a very emotional and very powerful story, and the way that it's written up here is very beautiful, and it really ruined his life and everything. In fact, I uploaded the on my YouTube channel. You can see I uploaded the audiobook part of the chapter on him being read. It has like 40,000 views or something. So
Nice.
people can go check it out. So that's the simple explanation that Lee brought in the rifle for the
It's a completely ridiculous and implausible explanation. If you were a part of a conspiracy to assassinate the president, you wouldn't be hitchhiking with a rifle and just opening your mouth to anybody who picks you up, being like, "Hey, look at this photo. Do you think the president could be assassinated with a rifle like the rifle in that photo?" It strains credulity and it's inherently unbelievable.
that sounds like
Honestly,
a that sounds like a
if you're naive and gullible enough to believe that, I have a bridge I'd like to sell you,
it,
Matthew.
it's more plausible than trying to jerry rig it and try to make Oswald's small package to be this long package and try to jerry rig it to try and make this whole thing work.
No, it's not. It's an asserted claim that has absolutely no evidence.
I just laid out the whole thing.
No, it's some guy said I picked up Oswald while he was hitchhiking and dropped him off at the depository. Somebody said is not evidence of anything.
He passed a polygraph test.
Doesn't matter. So did Aldrich James, the KGB mole in the CIA. He
Okay.
passed multiple polygraph tests. Honestly, the guy could just be a messed up dude. If he honestly believes that that happened, he wouldn't be lying. He would just be a crazy person. Like if you took a crazy person who thought they were Napoleon and you hooked them up to a polygraph and asked them, "Are you Napoleon?" They'd probably pass that test. They're not lying. They're just nuts.
Well, it could be. So again, that would be a simpler explanation, but let's move on. You think Oswald fired the shots in this from the sixth floor?
Yes,
Why?
because it was his rifle with his fingerprints on it. An
What are you talking
eyewitness saw him do it.
10 people saw a gunman up in the window. No one disputes that.
Mm. So obviously somebody was there shooting at the president.
No one denies that.
Some people do.
Some people, but not
Mm.
everyone. No one did.
Well, like I would submit that Lee Harvey Oswald in that window is a better candidate than anybody else. Because how would somebody else have gotten to the window and gotten out without being seen?
The building wasn't sealed off for several minutes.
Yeah, but there were still people all over it.
There was a who was that employee who said that it was very easy to access the building during his HSCA interview?
I can't recall.
Who was it?
But I mean, nobody saw anybody who didn't belong in the building.
Here it is. Here it is. Uh, uh, Junior Jarman. He was one of the employees. This is what he told the House Assassinations Committee in the 70s. Question. Let me ask one other question. Could a stranger walk into that school book building and go upstairs to the sixth floor without being seen? Answer. Very easily. So there you go.
Okay, so
This is
the absence of evidence is evidence of absence. Like
just told you
there's nobody saying that they saw somebody who did not belong in the building at the time of the shooting.
because
So why would we assume they were there?
what I'm saying here, look, and then it says, and so he's asked to like expound upon that, and he says, if we're busy or something, the elevator's right there, doors are, let's see, when they open the back door there, it's about 7 to 8 feet to that door. When the freight door is up, it's just a step, and that day the dock door was up and the side door was open. Question, so it was open to everyone? It was open. In other words, if someone walked in, there wasn't anyone there to challenge them. There would be no guards, so one could just walk in the building and go up the stairs. Answer, no guard or anything. Just walk inside the building, step on the elevator, pull the gate down, and go on up the stairs. Here we go.
They couldn't have used the elevator because the elevator was stuck on the floor on the sixth floor with Lee Harvey Oswald.
Well, it could
So
have,
they
and
would
it
have
could have
had to
been
have gone up
people,
the stairs.
could have been, well, that's just being pedantic. I'm talking, he's saying that people could easily enter the building, whether they took stairs or the elevator, that doesn't matter. He's saying they could
Yeah,
easily enter the
on a
building.
normal day under normal circumstances when the building's operating and everybody's busy doing their job. On this day, when it's a special circumstances, it's going to be a lot harder to do that because people are not occupied doing their normal jobs. They're, getting ready to view this parade.
Again, I just laid out the whole thing. I mean, the point is that anyone could access the building.
Yeah,
So,
but there's no reason to think that anybody did.
okay. But
Okay, there you go. It's like,
okay.
where does this go? What
That
does this
doesn't, I
lead to?
mean, you say that, but it doesn't really mean anything to me because we know that shots came from the sixth floor window.
Yeah.
And so
And we know that it was that gun that fired those shots.
some of the shots, yeah, some of the shots.
Well, are there any other guns? Are there any other recovered shells or recovered projectiles
Not,
other than the ones that come from the Carcano?
here's what I have in my notes. A bullet was found in the, hold on, it says a bullet was found in the plaza infield, and a mailman found a cartridge in the bushes near the depository. Two more cartridges were found in later years on the knoll and on the roof of the records building, and of course, three cartridges were found in the depository. So it's just yes, other
No,
stuff,
in
other
later years.
other stuff was found, but but why would professional snipers leave behind their own brass? Leave behind their brass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they might not have left behind their brass, but they definitely left behind the projectiles because you can't recover those.
Three of them, or three of them.
Where there's CE 399, there's the nose and tail section of one bullet in the front of the car, and then there's a projectile that was never recovered,
allegedly.
allegedly.
I think
Well,
I think the bullet that hit Connolly was never recovered, and the grassy knoll bullet was recovered, but I think it was suppressed.
why?
I'll get to that in a minute. First of all, I'm surprised that you haven't brought up, oh, Oswald's fingerprints were all over the sniper's nest and the depository. I'm surprised you didn't use that argument.
Well, I mean, they were, but he worked in that building, and so his
Oh,
fingerprints would be all over that stuff, wouldn't they? I mean, I think it's
tangent.
tangential information because his fingerprints were on the tops of all the boxes around the sniper's nest, so
Mm,
it shows that he had constructed it. But I mean, it's tangential. There's better evidence, you know?
I mean, the whole thing about his prints being on the box, to me, that's so easy to debunk. I mean, this is just one of those things that you can go right to the Warner report and it debunks itself. Because the commission admitted that the key box at the window used as the gun rest, as well as the box below it, quote, contain no prints which could be identified as being those of Lee Harvey Oswald. That's Warner Report, page 140. Now, this is
So
significant. Now, hold on.
why?
One box and another one nearby did have Oswald's prints, but as you conceded, Oswald did work in the building.
Yeah.
In their own words, quote, the commission considered the possibility that Oswald handled these cartons as part of his normal duties. And only one of these prints, quote, was less than 3 days old. The commission admitted the print, quote, could have been placed on the carton at any time within this period, end quote. And they ultimately said, quote, the prints do not establish the exact time he, Oswald, was there. So it doesn't mean anything. Like you said,
No, not really. Yeah, not really.
so I'm glad you don't rely on that argument because some people are like, oh, his fingerprints were all over the sniper's nest. It's like, no, that's his workstation. That's where he, you know what I mean?
Well, he was working on that floor,
Yeah.
but interestingly, on the morning of the assassination, he did not fill a single order. They found his clipboard weeks later, and he hadn't filled a single order the whole
Well,
morning.
I don't think he's some innocent guy off the street. I think he's entangled in the conspiracy somehow. I just,
Well, how
I just,
so?
I think he was a double agent who was double crossed. But that's another topic for a different show. So what? So yes, I agree. Shots came from the depository. So you don't agree that a shot came from the front, correct?
No, I don't believe any shots came from anywhere other than the depository.
Why don't you believe that there was a why?
Because I don't think there's any evidence for that. There's no evidence. All the wounds in the victims are all back to front. None of them are front to back. And also, more fundamentally, it doesn't logically make sense for there to be multiple shooters. Because if you were a conspiracy and you're planning to frame Lee Harvey Oswald for this murder, you would have one shooter in the depository using Oswald's rifle. You wouldn't have multiple shooters in multiple positions using different firearms. That's going to make all kinds of extra evidence that is going to get you in trouble and expose the conspiracy later on.
What if, okay, hear me out. What if this could all make sense if the original plan was it to be a conspiracy, blame it on Castro, invade Cuba, and so have multiple shooters, but then they realize, you know what? We're just tripping over ourselves. Let's just say it was one person. We got to cover this up. Just say it was one guy and move on. We went too
Well,
far. It
why
still
didn't
adds
they
up.
do that then? I mean, if the original plan was to blame
Have
it on
multiple shooters.
Castro and invade Cuba, why didn't they do that?
As I said again, there have been many, many books written on. I can list a ton of books right now that deal with that. But it seems obvious that the original plan was to have multiple shooters, have it be a conspiracy, and they realize, you know what, we overdid it. We're gonna have to fall back. Let's just say it was one guy. So
but they're
multiple shooters.
but like why would you go through all the hassle of setting up a conspiracy like that
I don't know.
and then
All
go through the hassle of actually murdering the president so you can have a pretext to invade Cuba and then you don't invade Cuba?
again, that's not my expertise. There have been whole books written on that case. I can put them up on the screen right here. But all I can say is that there is, at least in my view, one frontal shot from the grassy knoll. What do you think about
Yeah,
Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles running down the stairs immediately after the shots? They didn't hear Oswald. They didn't see Oswald or hear him running past them down the stairs.
they descended the stairs a little time after the shooting. When they arrived at the second floor, they interacted with, I can't remember who it was. It was Roy Truly or William Shelley. But one of them, Roy Truly or William Shelley, I can't remember which one. I think it was Truly. But from his testimony, we know he did not immediately return to the depository after the shooting. Also, the stairwell, you can only see the flight of stairs you are on. So if the person isn't on the same flight of stairs as you are, you probably won't see or hear them.
Okay, that'll be another discussion for another time. Did you have fun? Did you have fun?
I do. I always have fun talking with you, Matt. I always have fun sharing our interests. We
We
have
didn't
good fun when we're in Dallas together, buddy. We always have a good time.
always buy each other nuggets. Your turn by me.
Yeah,
I forgot whose
I
turn.
owe you nuggets.
What
I
do
think
you?
I think the last time I was in Dallas, I gave you the money for nuggets, but I did not actually buy them. So it's actually your turn to buy me
Yeah,
nuggets.
yeah.
Awesome.
We didn't even talk about the Tippett case, but I already did 3 debates on that with Bill Brown. So
Yeah. Well, honestly, Bill Brown is the guy to discuss that with. That guy is very knowledgeable about the death of Officer Tippit. He's the guy to have that conversation with.
I'm glad you think so. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Hey man, he said on our I'll say it on our side, Bill Brown is the guy to discuss the Tippit shooting with. On your side, you're the guy to discuss the Tippit shooting with.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. All right.
Awesome. It was good fun, buddy. I was it was fun talking to you. I totally do this again.
Hey, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me, bro.
Hey, anytime. You have a good night.
You too, man. Laters.